Django Unchained stars Jamie Foxx, Christoph Waltz, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Kerry Washington. Written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, it was released on Blu-ray December 24th, 2012, and runs 2 hours, 45 minutes. Quentin Tarantino's seventh film is an interesting story. It follows a German dentist turned bounty hunter, Dr. King Schultz, played impeccably by Christoph Waltz, looking for a slave who can help him identify his next bounty. Django, played by Jamie Foxx, just happens to be that slave, as he knows the men Dr. Schultz is looking for. So he frees Django, and they become partners. As they travel through Texas searching for this bounty, the Brittle brothers, Dr. King and Django develop a friendship. After a successful hunt, Dr. Schultz learns Django has and wants to save his German-speaking wife, Brunhilde, and tells Django the German tale of Siegfried, a brave man who stops at nothing to save his love, Brunhilde, from certain danger. He proposes Django work with him through the winter months, and in the spring, he will help him locate and free his wife. Dr. Schultz says that it's not only every day a German meets a real-life Siegfried, but as he's the one who gave Django his freedom, feels somewhat responsible as to what happens to him. After a long winter of bounty hunting and target practice, they ascertain Brunhilde's whereabouts to be on a plantation in Mississippi called Candyland, owned by one Calvin Candy, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. This feels like a significant turning point, as going from Texas to Mississippi is like jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire, at least for anyone with dark skin. To get an introduction with Candy, Dr. Schultz has to entice him by pretending to invest a large sum and be interested in a fight ring that Candy is heavily involved in, where they force black men to fight each other to the death. Only then will he inquire about purchasing Brunhilde as a smaller, secondary deal. While Django has to pose as the lowest of the low, a black slaver and Dr. Schultz's advisor on the Mandingo fights. Arriving into Candyland introduces Samuel L. Jackson playing Steven, Candy's old, pathetic, suck-up, bootlicking butler who takes an instant dislike to Django and is automatically suspicious why Dr. Schultz and Django are there, and he does his damnedest to find out. Though Django Unchained is a fictional story, the hate and acts of violence, besides the historically unconfirmed Mandingo fights, are unfortunately accurate. It's sad to see some of the things going on here, knowing such things happen to real people. The directing is top-notch, with clever camera angles, classy-looking focus shifting, and quick, unsmooth zooms reminiscent of old kung fu movies. The music is pretty good and appropriate for the Western genre, besides one hip-hop tune during a shootout scene, as Quentin Tarantino's worked with hip-hop artists before. The acting is excellent all around. I know those award shows are all garbage, but Christoph Waltz's Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor is very much well-deserved. He plays a very polite, prepared, and detail-oriented character. Once you see him, you just can't wait to see more of his acting. Jamie Foxx has a meek, neutral demeanor in his character, from being kept down as a slave, though you can see the resentment and anger in his face wanting to come out. There's a scene where he and Dr. Schultz are in a bar, and Dr. Schultz pours them each a glass of beer. When Django takes a sip, you can tell from the expression on his face he's tasting it for the first time. It's little details like this that makes the movie as good as it is. Leonardo DiCaprio plays the ruthless plantation owner who talks like a big man, but you can tell is just trying to be one, pretending to be more sophisticated than he actually is. His ignorance and arrogance are like a representation of racism as a whole. He likes being called Monsieur Candy, someone tells Dr. Schultz before the introduction, to which Dr. Schultz begins speaking French, which is quickly interrupted. But don't speak French to him, he doesn't know how. You might embarrass him. You can tell Candy was intentionally written with that sense of self-importance and ignorance that makes him look foolish at times, which I'm sure DiCaprio didn't mind playing, because he does an amazing job as well. There's another scene where he seems to accidentally cut his hand and appears to improvise and use it until the scene is finished. There's quite a bit of battle of wits between Django, Schultz, and Candy when they first meet, kind of underhandedly one-upping each other with small comments and observations that continuously build the tension between them, all the while trying not to show their obvious dislike towards each other. There's one actor playing a slave who doesn't have any dialogue, yet is highlighted a few times, obviously being pointed out to you. Pissed off and mean, he looks at Django in disgust at being a black slaver. But near the end, when he figures out Django is just pretending, he gives a little smile. That was a nice touch. The cinematography is spot on, with appropriate colors depending on the scenery. Beautiful, vivid plantation lands, cold blue winter months, and the dark, haunting, candlelit plantation house at Candyland, reminiscent of something from a horror film, with the look and color grade alone presenting an underlying sense of danger. My beefs come from near the end, where the movie changes from something somewhat dramatic to slapstick comedy and completely falls apart for me. And a mild spoiler, Dr. Schultz dies. While we remember him in a short scene at the end, I think it would have been nice to see Django giving him a proper burial, dramatically standing at his grave, seeing he's the one who made Django a free man, instead of playing around doing tricks with his horse. And besides, we always see unmarked graves in westerns of people buried out there on the plains, so I think that would have been a good fit. And not to forget the controversy surrounding the excessive use of the N-word. For those of you interested, the final nigger count in this one sits at a cool, even 200. Overall, Django Unchained is not only a great film, it's also a great Western film, essentially setting up the legend of how Dr. Schultz puts it, the fastest gun in the South. Part revenge and damsel in distress story, with excellent performances, directing, and cinematography. 8.5 out of 10. Winner of 2 Academy Awards, Best Supporting Actor, Christoph Waltz, Best Original Screenplay, Quentin Tarantino, written and directed by Quentin Tarantino and featuring an award-winning cast. Jamie Foxx stars as Django, a slave who teams up with bounty hunter Dr. King Schultz, Christoph Waltz, to seek out the South's most wanted criminals with the promise of Django's freedom. Honing vital hunting skills, his one goal is to find and rescue the wife, Kerry Washington, he lost to the slave trade long ago. When their search ultimately leads to Calvin Candy, Leonardo DiCaprio, the infamous and brutal proprietor of Candyland, they arouse the suspicion of Stephen, Samuel L. Jackson, Candy's trusted house slave. Now their moves are marked, and they must stay one step ahead of his treacherous organization. Special features: remembering J. Michael Riva, the production design of Django Unchained. 20 years in the making, the Tarantino XX Blu-ray collection. Django Unchained soundtrack spot. Blu-ray exclusives. Reimagining the spaghetti western, the horses, and stunts of Django Unchained. The costume designs of Sharon Davis. And Richard Roper of richardroper.com says, a bloody good time from start to finish. And A.O. Scott of the New York Times says, one of the best movies of the year.